I'm Jeannie from Tyrion's Landing, a podcast member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the one you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
You are listening to the Starling Tribune, a podcast dedicated to the Arrow TV show.
This guy gets more airtime than the Kardashians, right?
This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, situations, and stories are the properties of Time Warner. I am the Oracle, and this is your Tribune.
Welcome back to the Starling Tribune. I am Stargate Pioneer. My friends, my good acquaintances, the people that know me well, call me SP. And your reporters for this Legends of Tomorrow special edition, Season 1, Episode 2 of the Starling Tribune are Chris.
Now that sounds like a vacation.
And Michelle.
Can I burn some stuff now?
I always knew you were a pyro. This podcast is recorded on Thursday, June 9th, 2016, live on geeks.live. That's www.geeks.live. We are just a few Gonna Geekers that discuss the TV show Arrow and this summer, Legends of Tomorrow. Just a little reminder that I am more of a sci-fi guy, so this series is really cool for me, but I'm catching up to the comic lore more and more thanks to folks like Chris.
I'm contractually obligated to read comics now.
And Michelle.
Rebirth is still good. Check out Wonder Woman Rebirth. I recommend it.
Rebirth.
We are normally a show covering the CW show Arrow. However, during this off-season podcast, we'll be talking about what happened on the premiere episode of the CW television show Legends of Tomorrow, as well as news, articles, and announcements that have dropped in the past and that could impact future episodes. It will contain spoilers for the current episode, as well as the upcoming episodes, so consider yourself warned. All of our past published shows can now be found at GonnaGeek.com. Chris, go ahead and break down the current episode for us.
So you guys know last week was Pilot Part 1. This is Pilot Part 2. So if you listen to the Episode 1, Starling Tribune that covered this, a lot of these names will probably sound familiar, but still, the big names. Director Glenn Winters is back. He has 5 titles dating back to 2006. We've seen him do Arrow, Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Supergirl, and Smallville, but he's also been a cinematographer for Flash, Arrow, Falling Skies, and Smallville, and a producer on those first 3 shows as well, so well-versed in his DC lore. The writers we bring in, the big guns, of course, we've got Greg Berlanti, not Gerlanti, Mark Guggenheim, Andrew Kreisberg, and Phil Klemmer. Those are the bigwigs when it comes to this stuff. They know their stuff when it comes to the Flaro universe, and we've got them back this week to help us out. Now, since we are talking about a show that has aired back in January, a little heads up. The ratings for this episode would draw a Nielsen 2.89. Part 1 was a 3.21. But the Arrow episode AWOL that same week brought in a 2.78. So it did outperform the show we actually podcast about in Arrow.
That's right. Yeah, go ahead.
Interesting fact, when the ratings came in for the entire season, Legends of Tomorrow overall outperformed Arrow.
I could see it.
That's right. And I believe Flash, I was just going to say Flash, I think was the highest rating of the CW show, although I think that Supergirl outdid them all just by virtue of being on CBS versus the CW. Now with Supergirl changing over from CBS to the CW, I wonder how the ratings are going to shake out next fall.
That will be interesting.
Keep an eye on that one for sure. Okay, we normally start off the talk about the episode on the episode name, Pilot Part 2. So I did notice the pilot of the Wave Runner, Rip Hunter. He was using that control arm again, just, on his chair, up, back, up, back, up, back. That one directional control arm that does absolutely everything. And I think that's why they did this, because it was the second time we saw him jamming that control stick or throttle stick or whatever we want to call it forward. So pilot part two of the pilot with the control stick.
You're just going to be all about that stick, aren't you?
Phrasing? Are we doing that still? Is that still a
We are
thing?
totally doing phrasing. And by the way, Archer continues to just crack me up. I think I'm one episode behind right now, maybe
Oh my
two
God.
after
You
tonight.
have to watch the finale that was on last week. It is so good. We won't talk about it here because that's crossing the streams way too much. But oh my God, it's so
Archer is
good.
great. And of course, for those of you that don't know, Archer is where the term phrasing came back into modern lexicology. All right. Let's talk about the amazing fight scenes, because this is why I was into the show. The big auction house fight, the big fight at Savage's house where you have the whole team going nuts. You got Firestorm going. You've got the Atom going. You've got the Hawks flying around. You've got Heatwave and Cold just going at it with their gun. This was full out comic book fighting fun, wasn't it, Michelle?
Yes, it was. This team does not know what the word subtle means. They're time travelers, and Rip Hunter is all about now. Don't go interfering. We have to make minor adjustments. It's all finesse. And they're just all like, hey, let's burn stuff up and shoot and ram. I love this show for that.
It is a fun show indeed. So, Chris, I remember when we were talking about this back in January, you were enthralled on the fights too, weren't you?
It's the kind of stuff that when you're a kid, you always want to see. You've seen it in the comics, but it needs to be translated to the screen. And this is what we got. I mean, the big fight in the hangar, that's exactly the kind of thing you want to see in the comics. It's exactly the same reason why people geeked out over the airport fight in Civil War, because it's literally just action en masse and everyone's using their powers as best they can. And you're just like, whoa.
I was talking to a guy at work today. He was sitting right in front of me at class for the past 2 days. And when he introduced himself yesterday, he said he was a comic collector. And I didn't have a chance to talk to him until today. And so he sat down in the middle of a break or whatever. We had 5 minutes. I said, hey, man, how do you like Rebirth? He's like, oh, it's so great and everything. So we got to talking about it and stuff. So I'm going to be talking to him a lot. But he was enthralled with Civil War. We didn't get a chance to talk about Legends of Tomorrow just because we didn't have a lot of time. But I will report back to you what he thought about these fights. But Civil War, he's like, did you see Civil War? Did you see Civil War? And which was amazing because he said, I'm not really a Marvel Comics guy, never was. And he's a collector from like way back when. He's a little older than I am. So he's talking old school stuff. He's talking I was telling him about that fact that we had read through Longbow Hunters in Year One and all those old Green Arrow. And he's like, oh yeah, and he was going through the history of them just off the top of his head. It was great, but he loves Civil War. And I'll bet you if he watched this, he would have loved these great big fights. They're awesome.
No doubt.
And of course, Sarah, she was going at it too during her Nanda Parbat ninja stuff and knocking out young Professor Stein with. Did you see what she knocked him out with, by the way? Did you see what that was?
I think I remember correctly. Yes.
Drug paraphernalia. It was awesome.
It was a bongo.
Pretty much. We'll go with that one. All right. So this episode, if you guys are done talking with the fights, let's move on to our pal, Mr. Damien Dark, made an appearance in 1975.
Wearing the Dr. Evil suit, almost, it looked like. I was looking at that, I was like, that looks almost like Dr. Evil from the Austin Powers movies. It's not quite, he didn't have the collar there or anything, but the cut of it and the way it set on him, I was like, oh man. It's on purpose, I'm sure. I wish that they had sold the warhead for $1 billion. $1
billion, yeah, we have $1 million.
$1 billion cajillion majillion dollars.
You guys notice anything? Nobody else is bidding. Guess we just bought a nuclear weapon. Yeah, in 1975, a loose nuke forbidding in Norway. Mm-hmm. Right. Just
Like
see that.
Norway of all places to
Well,
pick.
if you're gonna explode a nuke, I mean, it's either there or Antarctica. If you don't really want it to mess around with stuff. Although St. Petersburg or Leningrad at the time was right there too, isn't it?
Da, comrade. It was Leningrad. I don't know if it's right. I don't remember my geography well enough at the moment.
It's to the east of Norway. I know that.
Da.
Right.
They messed up that mission so much.
They mess up everything so much. They're saving the universe. They're saving time, right? And they just keep missing the target.
The whole premise of this show is them doing and messing up things. I mean, Rip Hunter's whole conceit is, I want to save my family, but he has a lecture at the very beginning of this episode when they try to say, let's go back and save Aldous. He's like, time won't let you do that. You can't undo the things that time wants. And I'm like, but that's what you want to do, time. I almost called him Time Lord. Time Master.
It doesn't matter. It's the same. And oh, by the way, why wasn't he at the auction? I mean, I think we know later, but it's not explained here. Why wasn't he at the auction?
Yes, it's explained because he's all like, we need to do this and this. They're all upset that he lied to get them to join the team.
Yes.
And so they're like, hey, you lied. We don't know why we're here. So you know what? We're going to run the show and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And so he's just kind of like, all right, fine. You think you know what you're doing. Go on.
Good
what
luck.
Ifs. Because when they come back, that's why he does the slow clap. You know, when they come back and he's all like.
The mocking slow clap. I love it.
It's deeper than that, though. I mean, it's not explained in the pilot or the episode, and maybe they didn't want to give it away, but there is a reason why he doesn't want to go after Vandal Savage, and it's because he's run into him already in an earlier version of Vandal Savage. So I think truly he didn't want to expose himself to Vandal. He exposed the whole team, and they exposed the Atom suit and found out that they're from the future, and gets Vandal all interested in time travel. Oh yeah, we know where that comes from now. And
foreshadowing.
A little bit there. But Rip does save Kendra from Vandal Savage. I mean, Vandal does kill Carter. I forgot that it happened this early in the season. I thought we would have a few more episodes of Carter. We don't. He's dead, and he's about to kill Kendra.
Dead-ish.
The two of them, their scene, it was like, she was mad at him and didn't want her past again and everything. And I was like that. That was all explored in the crossover. Why are we headed back here, right, Chris?
Yeah, I thought it was too, but you got to remember, not everyone saw the crossover that watched Legends of Tomorrow potentially. So you've got to.
So they have to drag us through another boring relationship 10 minutes.
Well, it's a CW show, so they're always going to drag you through awkward, boring relationship parts. Let me give you a word that a lot of people talk about on Twitter and Tumblr. It's called olicity.
Shh, we shall not utter that term again on Starling Tribune, please. Let's get rid of it. Let's not talk about it.
There's other shipping terms in the Berlanti-verse we could go with. There's snowberry. That one's out there too. Tumblr's a scary place to go sometimes. You're like, how do people get on this path? I'm confused.
I don't know. Drugs? I don't know.
Drugs are bad, okay?
You got to cut down on the saturated fats too, because reasons. Stein talking to himself, it was hilarious the whole time. And he's a professor. He knows the trials and the tribulations of time travel paradoxes. And there he is talking head on head to himself and not realizing what an ass young Stein really was.
So Victor Garber was just awesome in this episode, period. I mean, I had flashbacks of him in Alias at the very beginning when they were bluffing their way into the hangar for the auction, where he basically just threatens the guy guarding Gorns. Do you know who we are? We've done all these things, and start listing off all these missions. And I'm like, oh man, Jack Bristow's back. This is awesome. And I just dated myself because people who are like in their teens right now are like, who? I don't know what you're talking about.
What show is that?
I'm old.
Did you watch that, Michelle?
Yes, I did. It's a very good show.
I did not, but not because I'm not young or old enough to have seen it. It was a time factor.
So
or something.
SP, it is on Netflix right now, or at least it was last I checked. So SP and any kids out there who have no idea what we're talking about, go watch Alias on Netflix.
I'll pull a Haley. It's on the list.
Yeah, I've got one of those.
Me too.
All right. So Rip eventually comes back in, fixes the whole Stein meeting his wife thing so that they can be together in the future. And Rip comes off as being the great captain, and we gain respect for him, right?
No.
Yes, that's what we'll go with.
I'm sorry. Rip Hunter is my least favorite part of this show. I'm just spoiler alert, I just
The best part of the show is Mick Rory. You're welcome, Norway.
No, the best
I
part.
love He's the best part of the whole show.
Captain Cold's the best.
Sarah's the best.
I do enjoy Sarah, but I enjoy seeing Wentworth Miller just chew scenery on there because it seems like he's having fun with it, and I'm a Wentworth Miller fan too, so that might be part of it.
They're all having fun. They all knew this was a joke going into it, really. I mean, they tried to pull it off as serious, but they're like, yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? It's a CW show.
Fair enough.
Just a big team up to fight, and most of the budget was spent in CGI, not writing. Just
You're
saying.
not wrong.
Although, Stein thinks Sarah's sexy.
I like that. You think I'm sick. Don't finish
No.
that.
Don't.
Oh, it was fun. It was so fun watching this again. I caught it really quick before we podcasted tonight again, because I haven't watched it since we did back in January. And it's just, this was a fun episode overall, except for the boring romantic parts that it's like a CW obligation.
Pretty
Right.
much.
Okay.
Oh,
So-
that's what the Hawks are based off of. This whole idea of destiny and fate, and this whole thing started because they were in love and a meteor hit and
That's
all that type of stuff. So
That's true, but the actors don't have that good a chemistry, I don't think. Maybe it's just me.
which is why I wasn't sad when Carter died.
Well, yeah, I don't think any of us were sad when Carter died. I was kind of going, they billed him as a main character and killed him off on the pilot. I bet that guy's a little pissed that signed that deal.
Maybe, but he just was not. I mean, I want to use some choice words, but then I'm going to have to censor it later, so I'm not going to say it. But he was not a fun guy to watch in any of the stuff that we've seen him in. Nothing against the actor, maybe. Maybe that's just how it was written or whatever, but it was definitely not it wasn't fun. I have to agree. I'm so glad that he died early, because then we don't have to put up with him for the next several episodes.
Carter's supposed to be a bit of a D-bag, though. I mean, that's how I remember him. I don't read him a bunch in the comics, but I remember in Smallville when Michael Shanks was playing him, he kind of played him as a little bit of a douche.
So
But it
let me
worked.
ask you this, Chris. You go into the past. You go to see past Chris Farrell,
Uh-oh.
Right.
How far back are we talking?
and you try to pull off the fact that you are somebody of importance in the future that wouldn't be known back then. Who do you pick?
Who do I pick? I will say that I am Stephen John Drew, the owner of the Gonna Geek website and founder of the Gonna Geek Network.
But you wouldn't know in 1975. You wouldn't know what a website was.
Well, I wasn't alive in 1975.
Oh my gosh, Michelle, who would you have picked?
Well, let's see. In 1975, I was 1.
Big Bird is who she would have picked then.
Yeah. I'm Kermit the Frog. I'm Darth Vader. Princess Leia.
But there's
I would
Darth
say-
Vader from the planet Vulcan. Gonna come and suck your brain out. That's who I would have chosen. Back to the Future reference if you didn't catch it.
Yes.
All right, Michelle, what else you got for this episode?
Well, the fact that what I liked about this was that Ray thinks he's like the genius and look, I built my suit and everything. And he just, he makes so many mistakes. It's not just, in the fight and his peak of the suit comes off. He goes with Cold and Heat Wave to steal the knife from a Russian dude that they think. And Ray's just like, oh, I recognize the security thing. Beep, 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 boop. Oh, and they're like, you just messed with a dummy box. And they get, in trouble. And then inside, Ray thinks he's the know-it-all. And he thinks he's better than Cold and Heatwave because, I'm the inventor. I'm a genius. I have a corporation. And you guys are just criminals. But, again, it gets in the way and he causes another mishap. He triggers a trap and, that's how they get trapped there and why they have to fight Savage at his house. It's just.
Ray thinks he's a lot more competent than he truly is when it comes to the heroing business. I mean, when you go and look at his heroing career, he's very young into it, and he had some moments in season 2 of Arrow where he got to do some cool stuff, and then he blew himself up. I mean, he hasn't had a super successful run, especially out on his own, because remember, the first few times he went out on his own, he was not flying the armor very well.
Now, as far as Star City is concerned, he is dead, right?
That is
he hasn't
correct.
come back to life.
Correct.
The only people that know he's alive is Team Arrow.
And yeah, some of them aren't alive anymore.
True.
Stirring the pot.
Yeah, just a little bit. So you've got that going on. You've got Sarah, who had come back from the dead herself, really. You've got the criminals and everything. And it's a fun... You're right. They don't have chemistry, but they were just mashed together. So I wouldn't expect them to have chemistry, including Firestorm, because they just came back together before this as well. We talked about this last week, the fact that the entire first half of Flash and Arrow were to set this up. So you have these people that are coming together for this season, and they haven't seen each other or worked together much, even with each other, with their own partners on the show. So they're definitely finding their footing.
Yeah, you have a lot of couples together. You have the Hawks, you have Cold and Heatwave, you've got Firestorm, and you're just mashing them all together. And of course, things go wrong in the beginning.
Very
they do.
wrong.
And if they would go right, we wouldn't have 17 episodes or whatever it was of a great fun season. So, Chris,
True.
do you have anything else for this season or episode that you'd like to talk about?
Did we talk about Jefferson absorbing the nuke?
Oh, no.
That was
The
cool,
whole-
and then leaving the big crater in the ground, and you'll probably see more of that going forward. Tease, tease, tease.
Big, huge crater. Nuclear bomb going off in Norway. That's not going to be noticed by anyone, is it?
The communists will surely not notice that.
Not going to happen.
In Soviet Russia, a nuclear device explodes you.
I'm sorry. That was so good. A little giddy tonight, actually. A little punch drunk. Been in a class the last 2 days, so it's been a fun 2 days. So, yeah, we had the bomb go off. I could talk about the physics of a nuclear weapon going off and the fact that it actually created the crater, which should have been noticed by somebody. But, in true Arrow fashion, CW fashion, when they literally explode every single nuke on the planet, this is no big deal.
But it's Norway. Who lives in Norway?
Thor.
Probably half the people that listen to this podcast. And once again, that's Michelle at GoodGeek.com.
Well, they were in that part of Norway that was way north of Oslo and where all the reindeer are.
Yeah, so you don't want to mess with Santa's reindeer. You
No.
don't get any presents later
No,
on.
Santa's not pleased if you do.
Right. So yeah, you had that big bomb going off. Not going to be noticed by anybody. No. Nuclear weapons just left and right are missing. No big deal.
Nope.
All right, guys. Anything else for this fun episode?
Not that I'm thinking of right now, but I'm sure things are randomly going to pop into my head at some point in time.
Yeah, right. It was fun. Next week, we go through episode 3 of season 1 called Blood Ties. And it originally aired on February 4th. So we're now into February of this year. It's as we're recording this June. And the summary of the episode is Rip decides to weaken Vandal Savage by going after his financial assets. So a true Al Capone moment here, the Untouchables. That's what they're trying to emulate. Rip and Sarah infiltrate Savage's bank, but are discovered by his men. Meanwhile, Snart and Rory talk Jax into taking the jump ship back to Central City so they can steal a valuable emerald. Professor Stein guides Ray on a dangerous mission. It was directed by Dermot Downs, and the writers were once again Mark Guggenheim and Chris Badak. So that will be fun. We will be going through that next week. So if you have any inputs on the episode 1 or 2 pilot, part 1 or 2, go ahead and hit us up for feedback. We would love to talk about it next week, or anything you have to say about Blood Ties. So going back into the pilot part 2 episode, we have started this bat checklist. It turned into a DC checklist. Now it's really a pop culture reference or Easter egg, DC Easter egg. We go through an article every week that's been put out by comicbook.com. Believe it or not, they did one for this episode of Legends of Tomorrow. He came up with quite a few Easter eggs. Chris, do you want to take the first one?
Sure, like we touched on earlier, Damien Dark was in this episode in his Dr. Evil-esque suit. You might remember him because you've seen him in all of Season 4 of Arrow as Neil McDonough portrayed him as the head of Hive. Don't forget, in the comics, he was a mysterious figure who claimed to be a major player in the underworld, and then also had connections to the criminal organization Hive in the comics. So, yeah, Damien's here. We like Damien.
We do. Crazy Damien Dark. He's a riot to have at parties.
Of course, if you haven't watched everything, it's sort of confusing how he's there at the same age as he is on Arrow. If you've missed a few things,
That's true.
Yeah, I suppose. But, I mean, he's an old guy to begin with. So, I mean, Neil McDonough is not young. I think they tried to make him look a little bit younger in this one, but yeah, it wasn't entirely. He wasn't a 17-year-old Damien Dark. Sure.
No. Well, remember, he'd been in the league for a long time with Roz.
Mm-hmm. Roz's good friend and then turned arch enemy, right?
Correct.
Oh, wow. See, I do pick up a thing or two.
This is after they split off. I mean, in the Arrow timeline, this would be... He's with Hive at this point, so we know that prior to 1976 or whatever was the split between Damien Dark and Roz in the League of Assassins. So we can sort of try and plot that out on a timeline if we really wanted.
Why don't you take that on for next week and do it in a nice, good PowerPoint presentation and
PowerPoint,
show it to everybody.
This feels like my real job now.
use Comic Sans.
Comic Sans. Oh, that's the best font. Everyone loves I mean, we're talking about a comic book show, so Comic Sans makes sense. So I'm going to do it.
You got to
Bullet
use
points.
the green writing, though.
I'm going to put lots of animated GIFs in there. Yes,
Well,
I
sweet.
call it a GIF, not a GIF. I'm sorry, Internet.
And all those whirly transitions between slides.
I'm going to use a lot of word art and sound effects. And so, like, when I push next slide, it's going to put every letter in there at a time with a gunshot. So, like, bang, 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 to spell out full words and stuff. You guys are going to love this PowerPoint presentation that I'm never going to do.
We look forward to never seeing that. Michelle, what do we got next on the list?
About the Egyptian dagger. While the concept of an Egyptian dagger being a good MacGuffin for a storyline like this, it's worth mentioning that Rip Hunter has been involved with a protracted hunt for one in the not too distant past. If you check out the trade paperback Booster Gold Reality Lost by Rick Remender, Chuck Dixon, Dan Jurgens, and company. In that book, both Booster and his son Rip Hunter square off against Kronos, who we met in the first part of the pilot, while chasing such a dagger through time, trying to get their hands on it before Wiley Dalbert, a minor villain from Gotham City, did. So I know this episode tried to explain how to kill Savage in such a weird way. It's like, we need this dagger. She's got to read it. Okay, so let's meditate. And honey, so you can remember. She's like, okay, I remember. And so they get the dagger, and then it's like, oh no, all of a sudden we're going to pull like a video game thing here and say only the chosen one. And if you didn't read the fine print, Carter, the chosen one for this dagger is actually her. So even though you stabbed me and technically it should work, it didn't.
You are the chosen one. It was said you would destroy the Sith, not Sorry, wrong show.
It explains why they never succeeded up to date. Carter always was the one who tried to kill Vandal Savage, not Kendra. So moving on to the next Easter egg, it's the Dwarf Star. Yes, they said the alpha particles were emitted while simulating the effect of Dwarf Star alloy in the atom armor. Of course, in the comics, apparently, according to this article, it was a fragment of white Dwarf Star that allowed the atom to grow and shrink at will.
That's correct.
What do you got next, Chris?
Next up, Ivy University's back again. You might remember that Ray Palmer used to work there, and it's name dropped on Arrow in the premiere of Constantine as well. Sorry, had a brain fart.
Yes, it is. So that was pretty cool to see that again. And apparently every episode of Legends of Tomorrow that goes back to university goes to Ivy University. It's got to be in the 60s or the 70s, because that's when universities were cool.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Michelle, what do we got next?
This one I think is a deep pull, but it's like the way, the very deliberate way Stein told his colleagues to be cool. It was not hard to think of the Barry Sonified Get Shorty follow-up. So maybe it was intentional, maybe it wasn't. That's up for debate.
Hard to tell, right? The next one we have is Elon Musk, and apparently per his Wikipedia entry, because we all know Wikipedia entries are absolutely correct, right?
They're the gospel, yes. Dang it.
Elon Reeve Musk is a South African-born Canadian-American business magnate, engineer, inventor, and investor. He is the CEO and CTO of SpaceX, CEO and product architect of Tesla Motors, chairman of SolarCity, and co-chairman of OpenAI. By the way, he was also 4 years old in 1971, which would explain why he'd be somebody who appeals to Stein, but wouldn't be recognizable to Marty. It's your kids, Marty. Get in the car. It's your kids.
Speaking of Marty, that's the next Easter egg. Martin Stein's going by the name of Marty and has a moment where time travel affects him while he's in the past. Because remember, his ring fades away, just like Marty sees himself and his siblings fading away out of a family photo. Very nice. It was intentional. It was confirmed, as showrunner Phil Klemmer stated.
That's awesome. I love how they do tips of the hat to stuff like that. So what do we got next, Michelle?
The Carlin Award. Apparently, young Marty is a 5-time winner of the Carlin Award. That's pretty prestigious, of course, and you can tell because it was likely named for longtime DC Comics editor Mike Carlin, during whose tenure as head editor of the Superman titles, Rip Hunter, The Linear Men, and Wave Rider were regular recurring characters.
Nice.
Cool.
Well, we're going to be moving on now. We're done with the Easter eggs, unless either of you two spotted something else in the episode that you want to talk about really quick.
Nothing off the top of my head that I can think of.
All right, so we're going to move on. Yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
A really weird one. They kept saying that, the Hawks kept saying that they had 206 reincarnations and there are 206 bones in the human body.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I did not pick up on that. Interesting. I'll have to confirm that with Lauren because she's the bio specialist on the.
There is 206 bones in the body.
I know. I just wanted to name drop Lauren's name.
I see what you did there.
Right.
I see what you did.
Well, so we're going to move on into the Arrow news, and there's a couple of stories that happened this week. We're in the off season. The writers hopefully are sequestered in a room, coming up with a great Arrow season 5. Great Arrow season 5. Let me reiterate, great Arrow season 5 because we need to rebound from season 4. And it's interesting that Stephen Amell apparently has some insight into that, right, Michelle?
Yes, during a panel at Wizard World Philadelphia, Stephen Amell basically confirms that the season 5 flashbacks were going to deal with Russia and the Bratva tattoo. He also talked about how he had dinner at the end of the season with Berlanti and company, talking about what went right and wrong during the season, and that he hasn't had a chance until basically this week. He said that like Wednesday, which that they were supposed to have a nice meeting about what's coming up on the season 5. So
really looking forward to that season 5 and looking forward to a big comeback. I'm looking forward to another season 2 because season 2 was great, wasn't it, Chris?
It was. That's the peak, man. Bring back Manu Bennett. Bring back
The
Manu.
Manu.
Yes,
Manu Bennett.
he makes everything better.
Yeah. Suncast in the
Apparently.
chat room has mentioned Stephen has some very strong opinions too. He is very right. If you followed Stephen Amell on any of his social media platforms, he's been very vocal about his thoughts on some of the fans' thoughts on season 4.
Yes, he has been. And we talked a little bit about that last week, but we'll see if it happens to pop up again, which it might because we're kind of in the middle of con season between now and when the season comes up and starts, and they will start principal photography at some point in time before the season comes out as well.
Someday.
So talking about next season of Legends of Tomorrow, I saw this story and I was like, yay. So what do we got going on with Vixen?
So you might have heard Vixen's going to join the season 2 cast of Legends of Tomorrow, but it's not the Vixen we know. Megalyn EK, who was on Arrow, is not available because of other projects. So to work around this, Rip Hunter and the team will travel back in time, and an earlier incarnation of Vixen is going to be on the team. Well, I mean, at least it's not because they didn't like her. It's more because she's busy with other projects. So I'm okay with that aspect of it.
I'm trying to remember if we mentioned that before or not. I think somebody mentioned that she had other stuff going on, and we didn't know if we were going to get her or somebody else. So, yeah, we'll see how it pulls off. I really enjoyed her in the Arrow quote unquote crossover. We'll call it a quote unquote crossover. And I might actually go back and rewatch that because that was pretty cool. And then we have some insight now, and this is really exciting to me, on Supergirl season 2 as well.
Yes, Supergirl season 2 is going to add at least 5 major new characters. We're going to have Lena Luthor. She arrives in town to escape the shadow of her brother, Lex. Nick Farrow is a brash leading man who butts heads with Kara at Catco and is the son of a famous reporter. The Doctor is a diabolical female leader of Project Cadmus. Snapper Carr is a veteran journalist, and Maggie is an out and proud detective for the newly formed Science Police, and I want to be a member of the Science Police. That is just awesome.
We need that, and we need the Internet Police.
Yes,
because the Internet is serious business.
I hope that all these new characters doesn't mean that we get less of Kat. I'm really hoping Callista Flockhart comes back because she is a huge part of the show.
They haven't made an announcement either way, and I would think at this point in time they would have a good idea of where they were going if they're starting to write the season, which I think they are. So since we haven't heard her name, I'm very dubious. I think they're keeping it quiet because I think what they're going to do is either write her off the show first episode or bring her back very, very sparingly. So we'll see. On that. So moving on off of the news into comic books, Neil, how did you like the Green Arrow Rebirth? Yes, I know you're going to watch this later, so I'm holding up my copy. It's actually bagged and boarded. Can you see this? Can you imagine that? That's Pete bagging and boarding a comic. So this is interesting. I don't know who put this story in there, but I was reading it and go ahead, Michelle. This is actually amazing to me. It's a very good story, by the way. Very good.
Yes, it is. Green Arrow might be the biggest surprise of DC's Rebirth. Before Rebirth, Green Arrow had been averaging between 20 to 30,000 copies a month. But Green Arrow Rebirth has sold around 90,000 copies, according to writer Benjamin Percy. And I can see why. It's a really good story. It's him and Canary. He's back to doing stuff in, like down in the streets and like social justice type of thing. And he's got the goatee. And it looks really good. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next issue.
And for those of you who might be jumping into the Green Arrow comic at this point in time, I just have to warn you, they are starting at a point where Oliver and Dinah don't know each other. So you'll get to see them meeting each other through this comic. I just want to forewarn anybody who hears this and hasn't seen it yet and is like, oh, I got to pick up a copy on Comixology or go to my local store and try to get a copy or something like that, which good luck with that. But yeah. It's a good story. I really liked it. As far as Rebirth goes, I really like the overarching Rebirth, but Green Lantern so far has been my favorite. I haven't read any others than those three. Read the Rebirth, I've read the Green Arrow and Green Lantern Rebirth, and Green Lantern is actually a really good story. I was amazed by that. And that's not taking away from Green Arrow. The Green Arrow Rebirth was really cool too. So looking forward to getting back to the comic book store tomorrow to pick up the rest of them. I was out last week and didn't have a chance, or I was out at a class this week and haven't had a chance to go to the comic book store. So looking forward to that tomorrow. So Michelle, did you actually pick up the physical copy or did you read it digitally?
Digitally.
Okay. It's such a shame that DC has not adopted that Marvel thing where you can what do you call that? Redeem the digital code, because I really like how Marvel does
DC
that.
books are $1 cheaper an issue most of the time.
Yeah, true. But they're pumping out twice as much now, so they're actually getting more money.
Well, depending on your Marvel book, they are too, because I believe Amazing Spider-Man is still coming out twice a month, and a few other select issues are too.
That's true, and I did catch up with the Amazing Spider-Man earlier this weekend. And I'm really liking this new Peter Parker.
I am intrigued by it. I know in the past I'd had some harsh words for Dan Slott, specifically on Superior Spider-Man. I stand by my dislike of Superior Spider-Man, but I am really enjoying his current run with Peter Parker, and the things he has done have been very good after Superior Spider-Man was good, I just didn't care for it. But some of the other things like Spider-Verse, Edge of the Spider-Verse, fantastic. If you're a Spider-Man fan, go read some of Dan Slott's stuff from the past few years.
Yeah, and I'd probably recommend staying away from, I forget what they call it, but the like 1.1, 1.2 to 1.6.
The cash grab books?
Yeah, stay away from those and just stay on the main storyline there. But that's Marvel. We're DC. All good things going on. You got the Civil War going on in Marvel right now. You got Rebirth going on in DC. I think DC's got this summer sewn up because I'm all in. I'm head over heels for the Rebirth. It is fun to read. All right, Chris, before we get to our network talk, let's talk a little bit about some feedback we got. I have to thank Cajun Sean. We already talked about his story, but he tweeted us the fact that Vixen was coming back with a twist. So thank you very much, Cajun Sean. This summer, it's going to be hit or miss as far as one of us, hopefully Neil, when he gets back, populating the news. So we really do appreciate you popping in and giving us that story. Thank you, sir. But Chris, we are part of a geeky network, aren't we, sir?
That is true, SP. We are part of the Gonna Geek Network. There is about 18 shows on the network right now, and we've got things for all your different geeky tastes. If you head on over to GonnaGeekNetwork.com, you can see all of those shows. It's a variety of things that are, some are recorded live, some are pre-recorded and then put out as a podcast, some are done as video, but there's all sorts of cool stuff there for you to check out. And we always do like to try and highlight one episode from the network. And this week, we're going to talk about episode 21 of Game Life Balance US, entitled MartinCon 2016 Board Game Reviews. This week, Cody and John played a ton of board games at MartinCon 2016 in Minneapolis, and they have a lot to say about them. Hear them delve into several board game reviews, then review X-Men Apocalypse, and talk a little Jessica Jones on Netflix. So go check that out over at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
And I will say we tried to have Cody on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. to talk about Jessica Jones, and unfortunately his schedule didn't marry up. Work has been very hectic for him. We're hoping to have him on for Daredevil Season 2 as are we hoping for these two people to be on Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. to talk Daredevil Season 2. Right, guys? Right?
The check's in the
Yes.
mail for my parents' fee, right?
That's right, it is. And if it doesn't come, we expect you to storm out and Michelle to come on in and take your place.
I'm gonna make the best of it for the fans, and then I'm gonna leave a day early. That's my plan.
You're going to leave a day early from a podcast? Good luck with that.
Shh, it made sense in my head.
Thank you very much to all our listeners. We did it at a slightly different time today because I had a conflict later on, but we will be back on our normal schedule next week. I just want to say thank you to everybody that checked us out live at geeks.live or on Spreaker. Thanks to everybody that's downloaded our podcast. We really appreciate it. Our download numbers continue to go up. It's amazing to us why anybody would want to listen to me, and we can only assume that you are here for folks like Michelle and Chris because nobody wants the SP.
Well, I mute when you talk SP. I just hit the mute button on my board, so I kind of read your lips a little bit to know when I need to talk.
I kind of figured you were doing that because, there wasn't the give and go that, was there before. So
Don't talk about my mom that way. Oh, wait, I must have misread that. Sorry.
And thank you to everybody that catches our replay on YouTube. And once again, thank you very much, Chris, for providing that awesome video editing.
And quick thank you to anyone that might have popped in and watched the Facebook live stream. We're playing around with doing some stuff on Facebook Live at the same time. So hopefully if you popped in there, you headed on over to geeks.live and watched us. But a big thank you to everyone who did watch us live. I know I saw Suncast in the chat room earlier at this time. Thank you so much for providing some comments. And don't forget, after the show, we will open the 4th seat so that anyone can get in there. And the next live show on the Gonna Geek Network you can go see over at geeks.live is Better Podcasting, Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, featuring one Steven Jondrew and one Stargate Pioneer.
It's a fun show. I love. Fridays are just a joy for me now because I get to do something fun. I can't go out to the bar because I can't drink, and it doesn't work for me. So I get to geek out and podcast Friday nights. It's fun to do.
Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Like us on Facebook and YouTube, and badger us on Twitter. You can find all of our contact information on the Gonna Geek Network at GonnaGeekNetwork.com, where you can check out our forums and other shows.
If you want to share your thoughts, head on over to our Facebook page, send in a tweet, or best of all, give us a call at 612-888-CAVE. That's 612-888-2283. It's been a great episode, guys. I think it's about time we wrap it up for this week. But any last words before we sign off and then open the 4th seat up to our live listeners? At Michelle Ely.
# for Carter. One of the lamest rallying cries ever.
How about you, at Stargate Pioneer?
# you're welcome, Norway.
And I'm at the Chris Farrow with # I saw a flip kick on Daredevil yesterday. Oracle, I think we're done here.
This was the Starling Tribune. You can leave us feedback at GonnaGeek.com or check out our archive at StarlingTribune.com. Visit GonnaGeek.com for more podcasts. Music by Kevin MacLeod can be found at Incompetech.com. This podcast is not produced or maintained by the CW, Warner Brothers Television, CTV, or DC Comics. All characters, stories, and situations are the property of Time Warner. No infringement is intended. We will see you for the next episode of CW's Arrow.